It's been reported that Bam Adebayo should be returning tomorrow night against the Raptors, and obviously that leads to a pretty big change for the Miami Heat on both ends of the floor. So I just want to talk about some of the things that we could see change schematically um, just when he returns, just immediately. They've had to shift a lot of things up because obviously Bam Adebayo is a pretty different type of player, and he's so important to this team that everything was run through him on both ends. They had to shift some things. And obviously, if you look at their record through that time, they figured things out. Guys have stepped up, as we talked about. Uh, but it's still intriguing to kind of figure out when he comes back immediately, aside from rotations, aside from, Omer Yurtseven playing time, Dwayne Dedman playing time, just schematically, do they shift right back to the things they did earlier, or do they continue some of the things that we've seen without Bam that have been working? So I just want to go through the first one, which is just the only defensive point I want to make in this one. It's going to be mostly offense, but I do want to say this Heat team is very switchy because they have a bunch of guys that are capable of switching. They have a bunch of guys like Bam Adebayo at the five who can guard smaller guards, but obviously, as we pointed out many times, um, the guards obviously will be stuck on a big, and it leads to easy buckets, and it kind of frustrates a lot of people. But the point to that, obviously, you're going to still see a ton of switching because it works. Obviously, you point out the bad, but it's obviously worked a ton as well. But I do think you want to see a good amount of drop and a good amount of blitzing that you've seen with Omer, you've seen with Dwayne Dedman. I think you want to implement that with Bam Adebayo just because, as we see right here, as I go through this first play, it can change when you have a type of a quick Bam Adebayo in the play. As we see right here in this one, you're going to see Omer blitz Darius Garland, and obviously now you have numbers on the backside. Cleveland does. They have basically a 4-on-3, and right here you're basically relying heavily on rotations, which Miami's been very good at, but also you're relying on Omer kind of recovering. He does right here. As you see, he kind of takes it inside. Omer ends up getting the block. But the difference is when they get beat, and we've seen a lot of times that does get beat, and they have to, we talk about guards being on bigs. That happens sometimes when you're a tagger. Bam Adebayo can recover so quickly in a blitz where if he tags out to half court line and gets a talented guard, he can get back relatively fast. And I think that's just the most important thing. Also in drop, the drop has worked in a lot of ways against certain teams, and I think you want to see that a little bit. They've changed so many things defensively this season that I don't think there's a reason to just strictly go switching and kind of not go back and forth and utilize the type of center that they have coming back in Bam Adebayo. Next, talking about the offensive end now, the last one I want to show without Bam Adebayo is something I pointed out in the Phoenix game, how they kind of handed the keys to Omer playmaking wise. But I just want to show where they were setting up here, kind of the differences in the way they go about things. They put Omer, basically give them the ball on the strong side. And what they do now is about four guys on the weak side, and it's just a bunch of stagger screening, off-ball screening, cutting. It's just a bunch of mayhem, basically trying to force a miscommunication on that end. As you're going to see right here, it ends up leading to Tyler getting free, and he hits him. It's just simple looks. It's the reason you can hand the keys to Omer in that way is because he's just making simple reads. It's a good thing to see him develop in that way, but he's just finding the open cutter. The difference is when you're talking about a guy like Bam Adebayo returning, we saw a little bit of it. We didn't see too much of it. I'm going to show right now what it looked like when we did see it. I'm going to show after how he was more of a strong side guy where they would put more guys on his side because he's more of a handoff guy. He can fake handoffs, get to the mid-range. But a difference in an Omer running this and Bam running this is this play right here. We've seen this a lot where Kyle would give him the ball back to kind of go. The difference is when they set up in a similar way as we just saw in that last play, Omer Yurtseven just cannot make this pass right here, right over the top to Gabe Vincent for an easy three. Like that is a pass that many guys in this league cannot make. And that's what you're getting back when you're getting a guy like Bam back into this offense. They have another base guy. I think I'm going to talk a little about PJ Tucker in a couple of clips down, but that's a lot of weight to take off guys like PJ Tucker, even Jimmy, because we know how many mid-post looks he's gotten without Bam. Things are going to shift, but obviously the big thing is we talk about shooters and you talk about Duncan maybe getting his guy back because Bam is the guy who set him up over the years. Bam's going to set a lot of guys up because this is a totally different center that you have running offense kind of in that area. As I said before, although they put, in Omer on the strong side and four guys on the weak side, they've also done a ton with Bam is basically this right here, where they line more guys on the strong side because it gives you more options, especially when you have Duncan screening for Kyle and he gets an open three like this. This is more Bam's territory. I do think you see a ton of that as well. Like that just feels like it's pretty inevitable. That's just normal base offense. But the difference is Bam has to become that type of threat to get those looks. Like he has to come back. You've seen Omer go through stretches where he just kind of goes crazy offensively and he's aggressive and he gets a 10 point, in 6 minutes in the third quarter, as we've seen recently. Bam Adebayo needs to do that type of stuff to force those type of looks. And these type of games that I'm showing, these clips I'm showing, are games where he kind of popped off a little bit offensively and it led to these open looks. Another one, as I'm talking about getting aggressive, this is what you want to see. I think Kyle is going to benefit greatly from Bam Adebayo's return. We always talk about Kyle helping Bam, but I think Bam helps Kyle a ton because they've had to work so much stuff perimeter wise with pick and rolls. Obviously, it's still going to continue, but they've had to run everything through Kyle, especially when Jimmy's been out. And now getting him back, you can just kind of give Bam Adebayo the ball and tell him to go. As you see right here, he does this type of bully ball. We don't see it as much as I think a lot of people want to see it, but just having that ability to put that there and go through offense. And as you see, coming off a game like last night that I didn't really touch on too much film-wise because it was just a game where guys missed shots. Like there's no other way about it. A bunch of guys missed shots and they got good looks, but that's just the way things go sometimes. But when things like that break down, giving the ball to a guy like Bam Adebayo and saying go to the rim is kind of an option that you need when things are going that badly. Another thing, probably the most important thing of them all, and I kind of waited until the end right here to talk about it, the Heat have not really had a big man mid-range threat throughout this entire stretch that they've succeeded. They found other ways to be successful, but you look at Omer, he hasn't really gone in that territory too much. Dedmon obviously isn't a mid-range guy. PJ is that little floater, but it's not a mid-range pull-up threat or a guy you can hit on the roll for a quick jumper. The only other guy on this team, big man, that you could really say that's his territory is Markieff Morris, and obviously we know we have not seen him in quite some time. So now you're talking about them having to shift that completely. If we're talking about things that will revert backwards, it is going to be the Bam Adebayo mid-range threat all the way. Like that is probably going to be his first shot of his return game. It's probably going to be most of his shots in his return game because that is a window that Miami's missed greatly. As we see right here, just kind of empty corner pick and rolls, hitting Bam right here, going through the middle of the floor and kind of knocking that down. They haven't had that shot available to them. They just have nobody to really hit it. They have Tyler Heroes. They have Kyle Lowry's kind of work pick and rolls and pull up in that way. They don't have a guy like that can kind of jab you and put it up. Jimmy has, can hit it on nights that he's rolling. But other than that, it's tough to see. And speaking of Jimmy and speaking of this mid-range threat, we've seen teams slowly throw the 2-3 zone at Miami. And they've responded, decently because they put Jimmy in the middle of the floor and they broke some things up for Philly and Atlanta, especially when they tried it. But obviously, when that type of stuff happens, you could put Bam Adebayo right here because as you see what happens, you can put him in the middle of the floor and he can play making that way. As I go back one more time, that's the difference maker. That's the difference of having a guy in the middle of the floor to kind of play make. We can talk about everything that Bam brings, but this is by far the number one element that I think can change the Miami Heat offense. And the last thing I do want to point out, as I've mentioned before, PJ Tucker, it needs to be mentioned again how much he's stepped up offensively and taking control of the offense. And just kind of working through playmaking and getting guys involved. And I talked about Omer playmaking over the top on the strong side. PJ's done that more than anybody, and I don't think that's anything you would have expected. And I think the point of this is that PJ's role is always going to be the same, but I think Bam obviously helps him offensively because you're going to move him around in different ways where he's not going to have as much on his plate. It's not going to be him being the dunker spot guy, also the handoff guy, and also the playmaker. Like now they have Bam Adebayo back where, of course, as I pointed out before, he's going to be a handoff guy and he's going to be the roller. But as we've seen in the past, you can continue to work offense through PJ and put Bam in the dunker spot because I don't think there's many people as deadly as him in that area of the floor. As you see right here, you see Markieff running at this time, but Bam Adebayo just lurking, and you can tell him just kind of in the chaos in the middle of the floor to go up and get it. That's what he does. As I go back one more time. Letting him lurk in this way, maybe developing a baseline UD type jumper would be helpful in this way. But obviously, just being that type of lurker, they've missed that. It's kind of been obviously stiff bigs. Omer and Dedmon have been obviously awesome for what they've needed, but kind of the versatility that they've missed is right here. And I think that's when you're really going to see an opened up playbook.